started in January when Maruti announced that instead of it building a manufacturing facility in Gujarat, it will sell the land to a 100% subsidiary of parent Suzuki. The Suzuki Gujarat plant will supply Maruti cars at cost of production plus cash adequate to cover incremental capital expenditure. A group of institutional investors opposed the plan, calling it unfair to Maruti. Their concern was that this arrangement will shift value from Maruti to the Suzuki Gujarat subsidiary, and that Maruti would indirectly be paying for the subsequent expansion of the Gujarat plant. They asked for more information, but Maruti has failed in quelling their concerns. Last week, more investors joined that battle. In a rare show of strength, 16 institutional investors have taken on the Maruti management. They are fighting against what they call a value-eroding, oppressive transaction, which is ill-conceived, blatantly wrong, and a contrivance. Will letter writing be enough? Well, the Maruti management shows no signs of capitulation. Then, what legal action can Maruti's investors take? Well, to discuss that, I'm joined today on this special edition by Anil Singhvi, the founder of IiAS, Anand Desai of DSK Legal, Mohit Saraf of Luthra, and Virendra Jain of Midas Touch Investor Forum. He's joining in from Delhi. Gentlemen, to all four of you, a very warm welcome. This is a rare instance, Mr. Singhvi, of institutional investors finding a voice, and they've picked a hard route because actually the first thing they could have done was to dump the stock, and nothing sends a message more loud and clear to management than a falling stock price. But instead they've held on. In fact, the stock price has held on, done fairly well and weathered this storm. And institutional investors are letter writing to express their grievance with this arrangement between Maruti and its parent Suzuki regarding the Gujarat model of manufacturing.
Sure.
Do you think they've picked the right route?
Not really, but I'm glad that the first time I'm seeing there's some spine with the fund managers, and more importantly when Maruti has almost 8,000 crore again deployed by way of mutual funds. So all the mutual fund, the domestic guys, if they're showing some spine here, I think there is a ray of hope that things will...
So what you're saying is actually mutual funds could stand to lose if Maruti decided to get peeved with those who are opposing that transaction and pull their money back.
Fortunately, this time it is not one against the other. All of them have joined.
Right.
So I think it's a very good move, and I think they were all waiting and watching for some time. So, but just writing a letter is not enough. I think just sending a letter, and they've just gone and met Sevi on this issue. I think this is a very low decibel situation as far as Maruti local company is concerned and Suzuki is concerned. So they need to be a little more...
Okay, so that brings us to the core of this conversation, which is that what legal action can institutional investors or investors as a class take against the management if they are displeased with this decision of the management? I'll put that question first to you, Mohit. Do you see what is going on here as simply a, let's say, possible violation of the spirit of governance, or is there a technical violation of a law or regulation, because that will determine what legal action they can take?
If you see, I think all of us understand that there is probably no violation of the law. That's one simple thing. But if you look at what all they have made statements, if you look at and you try to construct it, and also what you just added, the prices of the stocks have not gone down, people have not dumped.
But they did go down, but they've recovered. That's what I meant.
But the board meeting is tomorrow, but it's still recovered. So what it all goes is that people are using is as a negotiating ploy. And actually, if you think about it, a lot of investors in India, if you see foreign investors, Indian investors have always, whenever it's an open offer, creeping acquisition, they've always gone against the international investing or international promoter. So this, if you look at all the parts of the law and all the statements they have made, I don't see even a spirit of the law being violated. But yes, there is a chance that something which is not there will come tomorrow, and that we need to fight, but not what has been declared.
So based on the facts that are currently available, you're saying that there is no reason for institutional investors to be aggrieved, and there is no violation whatsoever, either of the law or the spirit,
correct.
And hence there is no grounds for legal action.
Correct. I would say, if you look at it, really, if you look at it, get into a little bit more detail, what you will look at is that this is going to go at the board level. There are strong fiduciary duties of the board member, that's number one. The new Company Act is going to come in, where the interested directors and interested shareholders, which basically takes away the entire half of the board, will not be able to participate, and therefore they will have all the reason Actually, if this is not an arm's length transaction, if this is a transaction to make this as a distribution
They will
company,
all have all the reason to do what?
they will have all the reason to block the transaction.
They have the opportunity
Yes,
to block.
yes.
Okay, so that's predicated on Companies Act 2013 coming into force before these key agreements between Maruti and Suzuki are signed on. And you know, if that happens, great, institutional investors can vote against it, and if their vote prevails, superb. If their vote doesn't prevail, and there's a very good chance of that happening, because actually they own only between 3 to 5%. It's LIC which owns a big chunk of 6% and more, and foreign institutional investors, which have been absolutely silent, that own 20% or more. So even in a minority vote, there's a good chance that these 16 fund managers will not prevail. But that's only predicated if the Companies Act 2013 comes into force. Otherwise, what roots do they have?
Well, depends. If they think they've got a fit case, they can go to company law board today. If there are 100 of them that come together.
Or 10%.
Or 10%. I think you just said it's less than 10%. So let's assume
Yeah,
100
mutual
of them.
funds is less than 10%. If LIC joins their
Then it's
fight,
more than 10%.
then they'll make reach
Correct.
10%.
So I think from what I understand so far, there's some issue in the independent directors' minds, from what I see in the press.
Right.
And they're not very happy with this, which itself is one alarm bell that is going off.
Yes, but that's, you know, that's a part or a partial alarm bell, Anand, because when the company first released the press release in January, they said the board has approved,
Right.
which means that whatever, you know, reservations independent directors have, they weren't enough to stop the board from going ahead and backing this proposal.
We have a letter from Mr. Bhargav saying that it was a unanimous decision of the board. So I don't think today that there is any board member.
A letter written to IiAS saying it was a unanimous
decision of the board, and there was no dissenting director in January board meeting on that. So I'm not too sure whether now the board member can jump and say that, oh, then I agreed, but now I'm not agreeing on that, because it was
It could very well be that all the media backlash and the institutional investor backlash
he
has
can't-
forced independent directors
can't-
now to save backside, right?
No, he can't change his mind of January
On that issue.
14.
Yeah, of course. Now, if he's approved it, yeah.
Now he can have his own that, okay, I didn't read this and this was missing and that was missing. But this was a unanimous decision of the board.
So
and
the
according
unanimous
to me,
is an interesting bit, because their own press release doesn't say unanimous anyway. It says board approval.
So they say it's a unanimous decision of the board, and they've in fact questioned this, that, you know, since board has decided unanimously, we are well within, as you rightly said, within the framework of a law. So what's your problem
But
with
I
this whole
think
issue?
the very important part, Menaka, which you said, is that the new law will come into place, and this
If and when it does. I mean, expectation is April 1st.
Okay,
but who
and
knows?
this act, this whole thing, approval will happen prior to that. But I think one very important part which I want to bring it here is that whatever is being talked about is really a framework agreement, because costs have to be passed through. That's what they have talked about. There will be no profit, and these are issues of detail. The lease agreement has to come.
So what you're saying that the detailed agreements will be signed only in the months to come, by which time the Companies Act 2013 will have come into force,
Absolutely, it
and
has
hence
to.
they will have to go to minority
Absolutely, because
for approval?
what they have said is that only post 2017 the sales will happen. And right now what we are talking about, they don't have a lease agreement. This is sitting with Maruti. They don't have capital cost. What is the cost of the car? Nobody knows it. This is an agreement to agree. This can no way come out like that tomorrow anybody can take a position that they don't need an approval under the new law.
Yeah, but Menaka, I think too much have been said in media and talked in media about this. As you rightly said, that right now we don't have the controls of the transaction. And I fail to understand a board having decided without even knowing what they are deciding. I think the board of Maruti has failed completely on this without knowing, as you rightly said, the project cost is not known, car costing is not known. They said the car will be at cost plus capital expenditure to be incurred for the next plant. You don't even know the first capital expenditure of the first plant. How are you going to recover the capital expenditure of the second plant? Who will manufacture the car if the car sales are not taking place in India, if the growth tapers off? Who will do that?
But
and will
is it not enough for Maruti's management to say that Suzuki will provide us cars at the same price that it costs Maruti to manufacture cars?
Menaka, I'm not too sure, because if you look at the track record of Maruti for last 5 years, the royalty which was paid to Suzuki by Maruti 5 years back was 2.6%, now it is 5.8%.
But that's a distinct issue.
No, but
it's
if
not connected to this.
No, it's connected to this, because if suppose Suzuki wants to have 8% royalty to be paid to Suzuki parent, the 8% will be get loaded onto Maruti.
Yeah.
Then,
no, it will get loaded through the Suzuki Gujarat plant to Maruti. Yes, I agree with you on that.
When in past ever a promoter has come and said that we will do it at cost, these are not a superfluous
But then why
word.
should Maruti...
Agreed.
No.
I'm not disputing that issue.
Okay.
But what I'm trying to say is there are hundreds of accountants. At cost means something. at a royalty rate which is prevailing today means something else. So all these issues are all fixable. I'm not really clearly understanding that why what they have said by like spirit or by the nature of it sounds bad, because somebody
So you're
told
saying
me.
the details are not fully known yet. People are jumping the gun.
Correct.
Wait for the details to fully be known. Wait for what it will cost Maruti to be fully known, and you will have opportunity to veto even later.
Correct.
Because the full agreement will never get signed at one go.
No way it can be
That's
done.
what you're saying.
Correct.
Okay. Anand,
So the in principle is being done now.
In
is
principle
what
is
you're
being
saying.
done. Correct.
And the in principle
no,
once
we
it
don't
goes
even
on a
know
certain-
that.
We don't know that.
We don't know that. That is an assumption.
If it's being done,
Yeah,
if it's being
yeah.
done, it's currently in principle,
Yes.
since we understand there's no details available today.
Correct.
Right.
So then why all the excitement? That's your point. The
That
only
is
thing is,
correct.
once an in principle is done, how much more do you need to give in terms of resolutions? Because it's passed. And now it's implementation. That's another way of looking at it. That's only implementation when the details come. Do you need to go to shareholders?
Menaka, the point is that when we're talking about what the future would be, look at the past. And past will give you what the future is going to be. And I'll take a minute on that, how Maruti has really behaved in last 5 years. You look at how royalty has been increased. You look at last year's Suzuki's total global profits, 50% of that was on account of royalty payment by Maruti.
Right.
Just Maruti's royalty payment was 50% of Suzuki's profits. You look at the dividend. The dividend payout ratio is 9%. So you have accumulated in last 7 years 8,500 crores by paying lower dividend to all shareholders, whereas you've taken the royalty, so you skimmed the company completely to the benefit of 100% owner, and 44% shareholders here, other than the Suzuki, have not been given proper dividend.
I get your concerns
know
about
the
the
future
past
in any
record,
case, yes.
but the point there is that we still have 20% FII holding in this company. We still have 3 to 4% Indian mutual funds invested in this company. So whatever that past record is, it hasn't been bad enough to drive away all investors. They continue to believe that Maruti is a company we want to keep our money in.
Until
right?
this episode.
So Anand is silent in this, so I'm going to come to you on this, Anand. There are 2 or 3 routes, assuming that the Companies Act 2013 does not come into effect right now. Let's say it takes
Or
a
you
while.
don't take it up
Yeah, so
for
let's
this
look at
transaction.
prevalent law and say, under SEBI and under the Companies Act 1956,
Right.
what can investors do if they find that this board has not done its duty, that they have not asked all the questions that need to be asked, that independent directors were negligent in doing all the questioning that they need to do, and hence that they feel very disappointed with the way this company has been run?
So they can go to SEBI. SEBI
Yeah.
can ask for the information, share it, and then the
But if
shareholders.
no law has been violated, and if there's no, regulation that's been violated,
It's
then
anti-investors. So the law has
Investors'
been violated.
interest,
It's
correct.
anti-investor.
Investor
That
interest
is
is
the
still
this
there.
is only a small group of investors who is
No, no, no,
protesting.
no, no, no.
Any
FIIs
investor-
is
no,
not
no,
part
any
of this.
investor-
No, no,
entitled to
many
protection.
investors have written. So it's not only this
So
mutual
it's
fund.
16 mutual funds that own 5 to 6% of the company.
Maybe.
That's
Ma'am,
it.
we have
Maybe.
sent a letter on behalf of many
5.52%.
investors. I've gone personally and met Mrs. Sinha on that. So I wouldn't fool myself that not many investors. They may not have come into the media domain, rightly so, because most investors don't want to get into.
These are
and make
individuals,
it-
they
no,
are
the
institutions, banks, so insurance companies. Does that
Institutions.
include LIC, sir?
LIC is still debating on that.
Yeah.
ma'am.
No, I'm just saying, I'm not disagreeing with you.
but
I'm
I'm not-
saying you
I'm
need
not-
numbers on your side
No, but
to prove this.
I'm of the opinion that you must correct this, that no FIA has joined, and I would stop it here.
Okay,
so that's
fair
not
enough.
correct.
You're
But what do you need? A whole bunch of people. Any investor or group of investors, if they say the right things to SEBI will investigate.
No, but that investigation has to mean that there is something to be found
Correct.
for
There's a
SEBI
mismatch.
to
So
take
question,
action.
correct. Question is where
No,
56%
mismanagement
shareholder.
is not, sir. This is a
At the-
difference of opinion. Investors say we don't like this deal, management says, and board says we don't see a problem in it. How would you prove
No, no.
mismanagement?
Is it justifiable on facts and figures? If we don't have enough information today,
How can you argue against commercial logic? This is like me taking a decision as an investor that you should not put up a plant in Vietnam, you should put it up in China.
When,
I mean,
when a 56% shareholder dominates the board, dominates the shareholder meetings, you can ask.
No, but
it's a bit different to
Anand-
saying that this is just a general board in a company.
so you're saying there are grounds for them to approach
There are
SEBI and
grounds
for
for them to
SEBI to
approach
investigate
SEBI.
and for some positive outcome to come
Correct,
out.
because if we know nothing today, and we are saying in principle
Specifically,
decision
what
being passed,
regulation, under what regulation will
investor
SEBI?
protection. The general principle of investor protection
Investor protection
is
will
to
kick in.
ask the right questions.
Section-
They have
Will
a
they
right-
take any action based on these facts?
I don't believe so.
Yes.
Yeah, that's
No,
I
they may
believe-
ask,
I
they may
don't
ask for more
believe so.
information. SEBI
You know-
can certainly
No, no.
ask, is this resolution so open-ended?
Otherwise,
it
take
can
a
be
majority
misused.
of
They can
minority
ask that.
vote.
SEBI usually sits in judgment of whether you violated its regulations or not.
That is
SEBI
what
doesn't sit
everybody
in
does.
judgment of
Correct.
whether
That's
your
the law.
decision,
That's the
which is
law.
a commercial decision, is a good decision for all your investors or not, especially when it's not like all your public investors are opposed to this.
We don't know.
Mr. Jain, do you think retail investors are likely to take any action against Maruti if Maruti prevails in signing these agreements with Suzuki? And if yes, what kind of action do you think will be successful?
I'll be just candid. Till date, Indian retail investors have not taken any action virtually in last 20 years against all the companies, regardless of their mismanagement or cheating.
I was just looking at some cases of oppression and mismanagement, and it does seem that they're not easy cases to prove. You have to show that the management has continuously, over time, done things which are deeply oppressive, negative to all shareholders. So just to say on the basis of this one transaction...
I won't agree with you because these cases are very old, okay? We haven't seen so much of corporate governance which is now taking place in India on that. So I won't fool myself that 97, 98, if tested today, will be having a very different definition of what it has been. This is huge. This is huge.
An isolated incident may not be enough for grant of relief, and a continuous course of oppressive conduct on the part of majority shareholders is thus necessary to be proved.
A significant act of mismanagement can be questioned. It can be reversed.
But can it be just a decision of this nature that would be assessed as a significant act of mismanagement or oppression?
No.
That's what I'm asking you.
If a challenge is made, question one is, will it be thrown out at the outset, or will the management be asked to answer?
Answer, yes, correct.
If they're asked to answer, then whatever answer they give can be tested.
Right.
If it is tested, the company law board or a court, if it's a suit, can test whether this is a correct route to follow for a public listed company with a parent having a dominant shareholding and
in the Supreme Court judgment, they have said in one of the cases that just because the minority and the majority does not see eye to eye, and they do not agree on a commercial issue, that is not a fit case for 397, 398.
Let me add a twist to that, okay? Suppose that of the 44%, not all public shareholders join that suit in any fashion, right? Suppose that the people who filed that suit only represent 5 to 8%, less than 10%, right? How much will that weigh on a court or a company law board when looking at the commercial sort of, advantage or disadvantage of something like this? Will they say, look, all public shareholders are not, so peeved with this. Clearly, others see benefit in this. So why are we to sit in judgment of whether this is a good commercial decision?
I disagree that because you don't approach a tribunal or court, it means you agree with what's happening. That's not a correct assumption.
No, okay.
If you have the adequate number that's required by law to approach a tribunal or a court, that's enough.
10%.
Correct.
100 shareholders are 10%.
But
remember
which is what is in the New Companies Act as well. Several of these are all mirrored in the same.
So you don't have to have everybody coming forward.
But the important part here is, in case of 397, what is required is the fact of the case should be such that a winding up is a just and equitable remedy.
But is winding up the only resolution of 397, 398, or does the tribunal have the powers to decide anything else?
The oppression should be such that a winding up is
and I know,
if you think about this, winding up for this case is definitely not a remedy.
No, totally, I get it.
And there's no mismanagement of this company.
There's another thing in the Companies Act 1956, which is section 169, whereby I think if you have 10% shareholding or more, you can call for an EGM. And in that EGM, you can put a special resolution to vote on this matter. So if these institutional investors were to get together and score 10%, and you are saying that they are close to that number already, score 10%, they can actually use 169 and not oppression and mismanagement, which is quite an extreme section to use.
So the problem in the meeting, you have to get a majority. That's only a meeting.
The problem is the financial institutions.
You have to get a majority. Is it a special resolution? So you need 75%, right?
75%.
Correct. So
opposing it or proposing it.
Correct.
Yeah, you need 75% for the vote to pass.
Of those present and voting.
Of those present and voting.
Correct.
Yeah. There's also a section, I think, 388B, where you can ask the government to intervene. And approach you can approach the tribunal, ask for some resolution, and ask the government to intervene and sack the management, etc., etc. But they just seem more extreme.
If government was to be approached, then you can go to Mr. Narendra Modi and say that this will win you few votes and just cancel. No, one sec. This land has
minor correction, Mr. Modi is.
No, one sec. Let me complete. this land and this lease was given to Maruti.
Correct.
Okay,
Right.
this has to be now shifted to Suzuki.
Correct.
It's not an easy process by any state government because it is given to one entity. You can't shift it to the other entity. It's the other entity.
That's
It may be ownership, it may be something else which you have to do it. So if you have to really transfer this in favor of Suzuki, Suzuki doesn't even have a land. Where is the question of having a plant?
Yeah, but
it can be killed.
Okay,
It can be
I'm
killed
not
and it can
really
be
sure how
very
this
investor
conversation
friendly.
landed at the doorstep of Narendra Modi, but I'll just
No, it is Gujarat because
I'll
of
veer
that. It
it-
is
I'll
Gujarat
veer it back.
and you need to transfer this land in favor of Suzuki for Suzuki to set up a plant. So it's as simple as that.
If any legal action were to be taken today, either under Companies Act 1956, whether it's Section 169 or 397/98, which is far more extreme in terms of oppressive or mismanagement, or if the Companies Act 2013 were to come into play, and then you have majority of minority view, all of this, is there enough legal grounds available today for institutional investors to block this?
It's tough. I would say it's tough. The reason I'm saying that is there's not enough information. If you go to company law board, like I said, if the management is asked to provide data or information of future plans, and that's tested against them, yes, they'll succeed. But ultimately, like you rightly said, it's a commercial decision. It has to be really blatantly bad for the court to step in.
So you're saying it's going to be tough?
It's tough. And the
So
resolution
unless
route,
it's put to vote and enough minority votes against it,
No, it's not a
legal
question of-
action is going to be tough.
yeah, the risk you run in going down the meeting route, if you get outvoted, then to go to a court is going to be very difficult.
Mr. Singhvi, last word to you. Do you think that institutional investors will succeed in any legal action they take? Because that's the first thing you said on this show, letter writing is not going to be enough.
Yeah, letter writing is not enough. I want to repeat that. The institutional shareholders really have to really stand up on this. As you rightly said, domestic mutual funds, I mean, they don't own much unless and until LIC comes in. And I have seen last at least 1 year, LIC has been very proactive in this. So I hope LIC also will join, and I'm reasonably confident that LIC will join in. But there are a lot of FIIs who have been sitting on the fence. They want to see how local guys are doing it this time and then want to join the bandwagon. So one hasn't heard. Picture abhi baki hai.
All right, that's a beautiful way to end the show. Gentlemen, thank you to all four of you for joining us on this week's edition of The Firm, and thanks very much for watching. This time next week, The Firm will be at the IiAS M&A conference in Mumbai. Ahead of the conference, we have 4 legal heavyweights from across the world sharing their thoughts on the deal economy. Conference co-chair Cyril Shroff on the changing landscape of M&A in India. Slaughter & May's Chris Saul on M&A and politics. Wachter Lipton's Adam Emmerich on cross-border M&A. And NUS Law's Umakant Varotil on M&A and governance. Spend your weekend at thefirm.moneycontrol.com.